Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live session. As always, excited and happy to be here. And thank you so much for taking the time. So, as we dive in, um, we'll always kind of go backwards before we go forwards, letting people kind of take the time to settle into the live session and have people kind of come on and connect. Make sure you can let me know that you can see and hear me, etc. So, as we come into this live session, let's talk about yesterday's video to start. Always again, want to share a little bit more information about yesterday's video. So, yesterday's video was really focused in on collaboration, and it's a really short video. So, if you haven't had the chance to check that out yet, definitely recommend that you do that because it's going to be really important to understand. And thanks, Brad. You're always coming in and letting know that you can see and hear me. Obviously, I'm in a slightly different location today. Just trying to work with a little bit of lighting I'm actually in a basement setting today. So, but I want to go back to yesterday's video. I'm always going to kind of start off and highlight the fact that yesterday's video is a behavioral question that focuses in on collaboration. And you're going to get questions based on collaboration. So definitely just kind of try and look at the nuances that I utilized in that video yesterday. Specifically, I really doubled down on the collaboration item. So it was really just important uh, to, again, make sure that we're really thinking about examples where we have strong collaboration. And as we think about collaboration, we're thinking about it across as many stakeholders as possible, both internal and external. As you're hopping into the live, obviously, we're just getting warmed up, we're just getting started. And always takes a little bit of time to get some momentum. So, as you're coming on, like Brad, say hi, let me know where you're visiting from. Always like to get those warm and fuzzies. It's also great because we have a large global audience, and that's really cool. Okay, so we got Brad and Liz on board. Um, I know my Wi-Fi isn't 100% perfect where I am, so if we ever have any Wi-Fi hiccups, just let me know. I'm not hardwired in like normal. Okay, so let's just take a moment. I'm going to just kind of prompt on these items. Hey, Jim, good to see you. I have an update for you in a second. Um, so as you're hopping in here, I just want to always highlight that for every single one of these lives, I want to provide some sort of maybe incentive to show up. And so I've used the coupon code May 2024. Uh, just today, 20% off the AI tool and the interview mastery course. And anybody watching this on a live running later, actually, I think on the course, I made it available through tomorrow. Um, I'm still doing one-on-one interview, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and then I added the one-on-one strategy session late last year, LinkedIn, resume, networking, more of that type of session. Of course, we're getting great feedback on the AI tool. We have about 1,000 signups, or we're just under 1,000 signups now. So getting there and working in a good direction. And just always getting good feedback on that course as well. So I wanted to give a couple discounts there. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday and new original content every Monday. So why don't we dive in a little bit? In our downtime today, always we will default to a more generic Q&A, but in our downtime, we'll talk about some really horrible interview advice and some of the advice that I've seen out there that I really don't care for, right? And so let's dive in. As always, I'm here to hang out as long as the audience stays engaged, and that can be however long it is. It's usually about an hour, but hang out as long as you like. And then if you miss anything, you can watch the recording on YouTube. So let's dive in. Thanks, Brad. Always good to have you here, and thanks for letting me know. Liz, always great to have you. All right, Jim, I was dreading talking to you today. I did not get those two shorts completed, and I did promise to do that, and I apologize for that. No excuses. I just simply did not get it done. So I will re-up and try and hit that goal for next week of doing two shorts. I am curious to know if you were able to practice those 25 questions. So please let me know. And good, some good banter between Liz and Jim. Thanks so much. Okay, our first question. Looking to set up a CV strategy call with you. Any advice on what to do beforehand to make the most out of it? Yeah, I recommend. And again, I just want to give like more generic guidance. If you're going to work with any consultant in any area, like the more prep you have, it's just like a job interview. The more prepared you are, the better. So if you're going to do a CV or strategy call with me, I would use the resume template on practiceinterviews.com. Download it, it's free. Really get that up to date, optimize your LinkedIn profile, and doing a couple of those steps before that session would just get a little bit more value out of the session. I always make that recommendation. Not everybody does it, but good opportunity to just again maximize our time together. Hey from Miami, how's it going? Good to see you. Also, I worked largely in non-tech roles in the entry level, looking for early mid positions. Okay. Okay, looking to early mid. Okay, I think that's supposed to say positions worked mostly and largely in non-tech. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the resume, again, just for the more general audience, I think that the big part of the resume and for me is I don't get super nitpicky on everything in the resume. The only thing I really nitpick at a ton is the summary. We just always want to remember our audience has limited time, and that bulleted summary and making sure it's specific to every job we apply to, network into, or get referred into is aligned with the job description. That's like the most critical item for me. Uh-oh. I see the uh-oh. Hi, thanks for being here. You did your 25 questions. Okay, amazing. Really proud of myself and definitely feel some increased confidence regarding behavioral answers. Regarding hypothetical, I'm still struggling. Okay. I'm actually going to roll through this second question, then I'll come back to you, Liz and Raheem. Also, with a Word doc and at least 5 minutes to craft my thoughts, I'm not scoring well. When does this become second nature? All right, so let's go back to this. Yeah, I think that well, first of all, in the AI tool, like the scoring on hypothetical is really tough. That it's intended, like the scoring is really tough, and that's something that with enough customer feedback we can change. But the goal is not 100% scores. It's just to make sure that you're continuing to move the needle up. Now, regarding hypothetical questions and really struggling, one of the items, okay, and you're saying without a Word doc and at least 5 minutes to craft my thoughts, I'm not scoring well. This is where the cheat sheet comes in, right? So start working towards creating that ideal cheat sheet with your go-to clarifying questions, your go-to frameworks, your even pre-planned assumptions. And then that's the item you're going to reference time and time again. So your cheat sheet should be an ever evolving and changing doc. Like continue to work on that and improve that doc. It's going to be really, really valuable and really help you with success. But there is no real magic bullet on the hypothetical side. It's just about putting in the work and doing it over and over and over again. And after a while, it will feel more natural and your scores will improve. But getting 100 score on the hypothetical answer, I'm rarely getting. I don't think I've ever gotten 100 score in my own program. I have on the behavioral side, but not on the hypothetical side. So, um, yeah, just keep trying. Like those scores will come up over time. And I really do want you to go into the analytics page and analyze what parts of your hypothetical answers are scoring the highest and the lowest. Please let me know if you have additional questions. Hey, Liz. Okay, I got a burning question about networking at big conferences. I'm uncomfortable asking directly for what I want, which is a new role or contract. Am I thinking I'm thinking about gathering as much okay, let's go to the second part of this. As much intel about current trends, then later writing to thank them for their time, express interest, and mention how I can help them reach their goals. Um, what do you think of this approach? What do you recommend to get the most out of in-person meetings? Oh boy. So this is another one of these areas where you're just. I think that my advice in networking throws everybody off because I'm trying to create a completely different mindset in how we approach networking. So here's my approach. If I was going into like a job networking event or fair or whatever it might be, um, I actually wouldn't ask for anything. Again, I know that that's a really tricky thing to say, but my focus area would be to say, like, as I met with people, I'd say, I wanted to follow a different approach today. If they ask about me, I'd say, you know what? Let's talk about you. I just want to focus in on my goal tonight or today was to come in and just see how many people I could help. And so you talk to Sue or Jane or Bob and you like kind of try and problem solve their challenge for them. And then, of course, you connect on LinkedIn. That can just be getting your barcode ready to go for those networking conferences. Or literally, what I just do is I just hand people my phone and have them type in their name and hit like I basically am sending the connect button through my phone. So that's how I do it. I have found that strategy to work 100% of the time. But I would just go in and I would say to all these people, if they ask about me, you know what? I wanted to take a different approach today and just help as many people as I can. Sounds like a crazy approach. Uh, who will be the person that every single and that everybody remembers from that networking event? Specifically, let's talk about Sue, Jane, and Bob. They're going to remember you, Liz. Um, People don't like the giving first strategy. They always want to figure out creative ways to get what they want. But when you give people and just give to people and give them what they want, you're going to get what you want. Because Sue, Jane, Bob, they're going to remember you. They're going to reach out to you. They're going to come back and help you. But even if it's like a back and forth and it's reciprocated, it's not going to feel the same to them as if you took all your time to just focus in on their needs. And you will be the only person at that networking event doing it. So you'll be the only one that they actually remember. It's an important detail. It works. My give first strategy is super scary. It's like we want to ask and we need things, but by not asking for anything and only giving is where we get everything. Again, there's a little bit of psychology behind this, but it's just my strong recommendation. Um, I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions on that approach or what that might look like in more detail. What do you think about going to work for startups? Worked as a PM for a year in big tech, still junior. Is this the right move? Um, sure. I mean, remember it's all a personal decision, but startups represent a lot of options. So here, let's talk a little bit about what I would highlight if you're going to go work for a startup as opposed to working for a big company. The biggest item I want to highlight is, do you like to build things from scratch? Do you like creating processes? Do you like creating systems, putting things in place? Do you like wearing a lot of hats? That's usually going to lend really well to a startup environment. Or do you like building off of well established processes, systems, really taking something that has real clear edges or whatever we want to call it, and then just improving upon something that's already been created? Because that kind of mindset will tell you pretty much all you're going to need to know. Um, but startups are always great. Obviously, you want to make sure the comps aligned. You want to make sure that they're not driving towards a lot of equity that really doesn't have value. Oftentimes, startups will have a higher base or bonus percentage, so it's a good way to make some money. Um, but you worked as a PM in big tech. The only thing I would want to clarify, Raheem, is if that PM role is a program or product manager. Product is really hot, and you should have a lot of choices if you're a product manager. Program managers have a lot of choices too, but product is really, really hot. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have more questions. Oh, okay. Liz, did I break this off? I think oh, yeah. Okay. So, sorry, we did cover this. So again, I just want to get back to absolutely. Like I want it to be a giving first approach. Let me know what you think about that strategy. I like the tough scoring. I do think some refining on the framework scoring is needed. Seems to ask for a short list, then want some explanation. even when I have put the AI answers, it sometimes rejects it. Yeah, I would say that, again, I want to be like fully transparent, right? Of course, like on the back end, we're running GPT-4. Our backup system when GPT goes down is Claude. So we do have a backup system. But yeah, I mean, sometimes the AI, we're constantly tweaking the prompts, and that's been it's going on a year. And we're constantly tweaking the prompts. Two areas where the prompts continue to shows a little bit of deviation as they show a little bit of deviation in the clarifying questions and the frameworks. And that's probably why you're seeing maybe a little bit more consistent scoring on the behavioral side. And that's something that we continue to tweak. We actually, without getting too much into the details, we have done some very unique things with how we have put together the prompts for the hypothetical questions because obviously it's in depth. And the crazy thing, again, I don't know how much this audience cares about it, but um, 3 point ChatGPT 3.5 literally could not handle my hypothetical prompts. It wasn't till we got to 4 that it could really put it together and give what I thought was solid feedback. So that actually needed to happen, before the launch, and of course, that happened well before the launch of the app, but I just thought it was, um, just interesting to share. But yeah, it's something that we're continuing to tweak. We're literally changing those prompts, every week or two to make sure that we're just keeping them up to date and fine tuning them as much as we can. Thank you for that feedback. And anybody who's used the app, who's watching now or considering using the app, like we're only going to focus in on what our users tell us they want. That's it. And then, of course, we're going to drive and deliver things on the B2B side. But for the B2C, for the consumers, the everyday user, please tell us what you want because we will do it. We will build it. We will take it seriously. And the more people who say the same thing, obviously, we'll double down on the dev costs in those areas. Thanks for that, Jim. Okay, Liz, great. You're going to try it. So, just to quickly recap for anybody who wasn't here with Liz, I recommended going to networking events and only giving, not receiving, and asking how you can help people and how that will make you more memorable than asking for anything. Okay, you have more ideas for the app. You'll compile a list and send it to me. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we are really early into this live without questions. Pretty uncommon for us. So, as you're coming into this live stream, really like anything and everything is on the table. I'm happy to answer any questions as they come in. Let's do a little bit. Let's focus in on what's the worst interview advice you've gotten when we hit our downtime. So I'm going to answer this question and then maybe we'll cover a couple of those areas that might be helpful. All right. So for GCA, Googliness and Leadership, started watching your videos. Thank you. I've scheduled next week. What would be one thing we should focus on without fail? Without fail, always solve like you're in the role. So in the behavioral side, hey, that happened in the past. It's the past, right? And so we're not trying to change anything that happened in the past. The past is the past. But if they say, I want you to imagine, what would you do in X scenario? Um, Imagine you're in Y scenario, whatever it might be. Anything that's hypothetical, you solve like you're in the role. Because anything else, it's going to be too generic. You're going to be asking the wrong questions, giving the wrong frameworks, making the wrong assumptions, giving the wrong solutions. So your default mode is any hypothetical question. You just get into the role as much as you can. If that is the one piece of advice I could give a few others, but that's the number one. I mean, a couple of other areas is like definitely go in with a plan, like you're going to use STAR method for behavioral, CFAST for hypothetical, and then lastly, it's in the details. People don't remember food in the sports game. They remember pepperoni pizza in the Boston Celtics. They remember the latter because they can visualize it. Without visuals, interviewers fall asleep. They're checking their email, they're checking the menu of the restaurant they're going to that night, they're checking the sports score, whatever they're doing, but they're not paying attention to what you're saying. We have to keep them connected with really, really strong visuals. Otherwise, they just literally cannot pay attention. They cannot hang out. Okay, please, any additional questions and comments as they come in? Let's talk about what's the worst interview advice you've gotten. And I'm just gonna talk about this subject for a couple minutes. And again, as questions come in, I'll answer them. Um, when we talk about interviews specifically, like one of The tell me about yourself answers are horrible. I really I really don't care where you went to school or what your previous life was before we're talking about role specificity and why you're aligned with that role. If you like to go for long walks and you got your degree in finance and all that stuff, okay, whatever. But I want to know three reasons why you're a fit for the role. Remember, they're warm up questions. They're light and fluffy. It's the same thing with the strengths or why should we hire you? You're really looking for role alignment. And some of the interview advice I've seen for these types of questions, it's really, really bad. Okay. Another piece of advice that I've seen, and this actually, like one of my friends actually gives this advice, is like 1 minute behavioral answers. I would say absolutely no way. Um, I cannot guarantee how much the interviewer will or will not probe on that 1 minute. So I always recommend 3 to 4 minutes on behavioral answers. And with 3 to 4 minutes, you're spending about 30 seconds on the situation and task and about 30 seconds on the results. And then the middle, it's about 2 to 3 minutes on the actions. You have to dive deep into what you did and how you did it. Otherwise, I can never picture you in the role and I will not hire you. So I think anytime I see that 1 minute answers, um, it's just really, really poor advice. And let me bring up a third before I go in and answer Raheem's question, which is like a third is on the hypothetical side is just failing to have a plan and like you if you Google this is kind of crazy. If you Google answering hypothetical questions, the number one hit on Google is from a current or former Google employee who lists out hypothetical questions, and all the hypothetical questions they list out are behavioral questions. They're all tell me about a time when, give me an example of. So like they're not even hypothetical questions. It's absolutely crazy. So just make sure that if you're answering hypothetical questions that you absolutely go in with a plan. And of course, I recommend CFAS. We can continue to talk about the worst interview advice. And actually, let me throw that back to the audience. What's the worst advice you've gotten? And how did that show up negatively in an interview? Just throwing it out there to anybody who wants to answer that. You are welcome. Okay. I've got 2 years of experience. Is it worth applying for positions abroad? And when is it best to do so? Um, well, you've got 2 years of experience. Um, You can apply to positions abroad, but it just like it depends, right? It depends on the country, what their regulations are. It's really important for you to know that. A lot of times when we want to go from our home country to working abroad, it's best to be in a large organization that can maybe help us with that transfer. It's just the easiest way to do it. It's the lowest hanging fruit. So it is a strong recommendation of mine. Um, so applying to positions abroad, if there is specific sponsorship requirements, your resume will get passed over quite a bit. And of course, if you're watching this live stream, anybody who's here, you know I don't recommend applying to jobs that I prefer that you network in or you get referred. Of course, I don't want to say don't apply at all, but just throwing out a ton of applications isn't really helping our cause. The percentage of people getting jobs, the tough jobs, the competitive jobs through applications is pretty limited. So, but if we're going abroad, we always want to understand, okay, like if I'm moving from one country to another country in the EU, for example, it's going to be easier than trying to move from a country outside of the US into the US, like anywhere, right? So, just some things to be thinking about. Let me know if you have more questions. Okay, Hunter. What is the best practice when it comes to CV/resume? 2 pages? Yeah, I like two. If it spills onto a third page, if you have, 10, 15, 20 plus years of experience, that's okay. Remember, the one-page resume is for us older folks who have some gray and remember what it was like to print out resumes and staple them together and have to actually flip the page. But that one page resume stuff is just it's a very, very dated item, and I just don't believe in it at all. And again, I would put this in the category of what's the worst job search advice, and it's trying to keep your resume to one page. It's just such a particular item, and if you want to create a really good summary and have space for your education and another skills summary at the bottom of your resume, for example, there's just no way to do it in one page without making the font so small, right? It's just the font's going to be small, the margins are going to be crazy. It just doesn't look good, and it's just much easier to read if it spills onto a second or third page. Hey Jeff, I saw a role a couple days ago on LinkedIn. Changed to no longer accepting applications today. It was still open yesterday. Niche role at a national lab that has 40 applicants after being reposted for a month. My question is, does the requisition closing today mean they've chosen their candidate or they're still looking at the current pool of candidates? I hadn't applied yet, but I have the contact information for the HM. They asked people to contact them with any questions. Could I still contact them and see if they're interested in seeing my information? 100%, especially if they've created that call to action, right? So if they've created that call to action, why wouldn't you still reach out to them? Some of this stuff online, like the no longer receiving applications, could be that they've identified somebody or just that they have a strong pipeline. It's probably the latter. They probably just have a strong pipeline, but we don't know for sure. Now, if they said, if they said that they wanted people to contact them with questions, maybe you take a different approach. Maybe you ask them what they love the most about their job, what they love the most about their position, what's the coolest thing they're working on right now, what do they love about leading their team? Would feel very different. And if they're no longer accepting applications, why wouldn't you do something different to maybe stand out? Again, I always kind of lean into some of the science and psychology here. And so when people get questions about themselves or asked about themselves, they like you more, and that's not me just saying that. That's actually scientifically proven that the more people talk about themselves, the more they like you. So you might say, "Hey, I'm interested in the role, but I wanted to find out more about you before moving forward," and that may be enough with it even everything being shut down and no longer accepting applications to get you in the door. So yeah, again, it's a little bit of a risk, but I think it's a risk worth taking at this point, in my opinion. How to represent 2 titles in the LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, so I would kick that back and say, like, well, what are the 2 titles we're trying to represent? But, like, there's no reason why we can't do program/product manager, right? If we're taking on those 2 roles. The other thing is that resume and LinkedIn can really kinda be whatever you want it to be. You can really speak more to the actual role that you're doing. It's just in the job applications that you wanna make sure that it's identical and matches so that if there's a background check, it I it identically matches with the role that they gave or title that they gave you. But on LinkedIn, you can play around. I mean, I change things up on LinkedIn so often. I mean, I even change my title up on LinkedIn sometimes. I had to change my LinkedIn because I noticed a spelling error in my LinkedIn background photo this morning. I'd spelled LinkedIn incorrectly, right? And it's just kind of funny, but like LinkedIn is an ever breathing, changing, living thing, in my opinion. And I think it's just we should constantly need to be updating LinkedIn. Things break in LinkedIn too. Like if you've hyperlinked in any media or added any content, those links break all the time. We just need to constantly be looking at our profile, updating it and optimizing it, but I wouldn't overthink the titles, like, just call yourself whatever you were doing. It's really when we get to the job application that we wanna make sure it's clear, and if anybody asked that in an interview and was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, like, is this your actual title?" You could say, "I just wanted to tell the world, like, what I was actually doing. My real title is senior manager, but I'm really doing program and product management." So I listed it as program and product management. My generic title is just senior manager because I handle a lot of different things. So we're providing a little bit more clarity to our audience. And again, that's kind of our external facing anybody who hits LinkedIn, but we can also pivot that and use that strategically in a conversation as well. I hope that helped. That's a great question though, because I think a lot of people are confused at like, hey, what's the title I should bring in? How should I use two titles? And I would just say play around with it and see what looks the best. We're at the 30s. At the 30s, I'm just going to take 30 seconds to prompt on my services. If you use the coupon code May 2024, 20% off the AI tool and the interview mastery course. I think I allowed those both to run through tomorrow. So you have a day and a half to go ahead and get those in if you want to go there. Um, I'm still doing one-on-one interview, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and I do the one-on-one resume, LinkedIn, and networking sessions as well. And of course, still doing the one-on-one negotiation coaching, which I might have just said a second ago. The AI tool is doing great. We're getting really close to 1,000 signups, which is 1,000 signups is a really good test to say like, hey, users like it and they're coming in and we're getting more traction every week. And then, the interview mastery course has been out a couple of years and we're still getting really good feedback on that as well. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday, and then new original content every Monday. Thanks. I have an interview for an AS strategist role at Google Dublin. Please, what should I expect and how should I prepare for it? Okay. I definitely want you to go check out the account strategist video I did. I would say my top two clients for interview coaching for Google specifically are customer engineers and account strategists. I've done hundreds for each one of those roles. So for an account strategist, you're just going to have three interviews: a GCA, an RRK, and a Googliness in leadership. It's just three. So for an account strategist, the biggest piece I want you to understand is the recruiter is going to say you don't need to have Google Ads knowledge. I want you to have a little bit. And why that's important is when you're answering hypothetical questions, if you could say, well, in this specific case, when you're bringing in your assumptions, maybe you imagine it's a brick and mortar and online flip flop retailer. And maybe you want to use Google shopping ads to drive more traffic specifically to their online stores. We want to bring in some ad specific data because it's just going to be really, really helpful. Like, recruiters are always saying like we don't need to know about Google ads or we don't need to know about a specific product area, but that will bring some color to your answer when you start to talk about the specific ad solutions you might bring up. Remember, you do not need to be an expert in ads, but I would just spend a little bit of time learning more about ads because it will increase and enhance your answers. I've done a ton of, again, account strategist coaching. So I would just let me know if you have more questions or if you have more specific questions, and I'm happy to help. Having worked abroad, I would like to add, you never know unless you apply. It was the best thing I ever did. Yes, earn less in the US, but better quality of life, priceless. Yeah, you'll never know unless you apply, but apply strategically, right? Again, so I've been pretty critical, and I will remain a little bit critical of the applications as a badge of honor, right? And so, like, what do I mean by that? We see more than ever in the last year or two, I have seen more than ever posts that say, I applied to 100 jobs, I applied to 500 jobs, I applied to 1,000 jobs, and I didn't get the job. It's like, well, of course all you're doing is just applying and probably hitting the easy apply button and you're just applying, 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 applying. More applications does not get you closer to a job. It's finding that balance and mix of networking, really pushing to get referrals of people you know, and then applying. It's got to be all three. But just straight applying to me, and I just always have to kind of poke at this is apply sparingly and apply through the company website. And just going through any third party, I don't recommend it. Apply through the website if you can, is my recommendation always. Quality of life, highly subjective, just better fit for me. But like you said, you'll never know unless you try. Yeah. So I don't know that I really understand where we're going with this. Liz, but we do want to be thinking about everything when it comes to jobs. And I think one of the biggest quality of life items is, and again, maybe the worst interview advice you've gotten is that nobody's giving you the advice that we really need to learn as much about the hiring manager, as much about your next manager, your next lead as possible. And that should be maybe asking for a follow up conversation before you accept the offer, because your quality of life will be directly dependent upon your manager. Good manager, good life; bad manager, bad life. Okay, so director of software engineering and solutions architect. Oh, how do we represent these two titles? Okay, so if we were looking at these two titles of director of software engineering slash solutions architect, um, I would definitely lead with director of software engineering, and then maybe in parens, you could put solution architecture or something like that as well. That might just tell them that, look, you're a director in the software engineering space, but you also know how to architect and come up with those types of solutions. Again, you can play around with it. It's not rigid. That's the most important part. Play around with it and see what plays. We've got a lot of alignment on research and interest in what we do. He was presenting on the specific niche that I was writing a scientific paper at the same time. Um, I'll reach out about those common interests, see if he's interested in learning more. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, and I just want to go back to this. Let's go back to this third comment. So they asked to contact them with any questions. So if we come back to this, and you're saying, okay, we got a lot of alignment on research. It's presenting in the specific niche. I'm writing, I'll reach out. Okay, we're going to reach out on common interests. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad, like, look, I mean, there are certain things that we all get excited and interested about. So I think it is a good approach. So it's definitely something to consider. I definitely think that you could ask a couple of questions around that. Say, "Hey, like, I came up with this paper and I took these couple of approaches. What do you think? Like, what do you think in terms of A, in terms of B? I thought it was just an interesting dialogue." We do really want to get their opinion, their own feedback to engage with them. So it's going to be really, really important. Can the coupon be code be used on the CV strategy call? I'm not currently discounting my time. So the AI tool and the mastery course are, I mean, they take a lot of time on my end to do the upkeep and stuff, but no current discounts on my one-on-one coaching. But thank you for asking. Will you give one-on-one coaching for Google as a director of software engineering role? I mean, absolutely. Of all the leadership roles that I've done for Google, at the director level, that's my number one. I've coached more people trying to get into Google as a director of software engineering than any other director role at Google, so I'm very familiar with that type of coaching. Obviously, it's a non-technical, it's a soft skills, but I've done it quite a few times. Oh, Olympia, awesome. Thanks for being here. Is it typical to have 4 interviews in 2 days? I gave 3 weeks of availability. So, the reality is that we somehow, and again, I'm just kinda talking for the broader audience, and I'm including myself in this. I think we've somehow forgotten that, we used to have to do all the interviews in 1 day, and now, like, we're surprised when the interviews hit in 1 day or 2 days. I mean, they're basically just trying to get it done, and that's just what worked for the calendar. I mean, I think it's much easier to interview than it used to be. I think it's easier to interview not in person. We give up the energetic piece, right? We give up a little bit of that, but we have our cheat sheet. We don't have to commute in. We can wear pajamas on the bottom, like whatever we want to be cozy. So, but it's we've gotten a little bit more used to interviews being spread out, and I would say, like we just need to take what they give us. And I do kind of like the condensed because it just puts tremendous pressure on you to be prepared. Um, so just my 2 cents, but we're getting a little bit more used to things being more spread out and less intense. But we're really fortunate that now we don't have to sit in an office for 4 straight interviews and pretend like our brains are going to perform at a high level for that long of a period of time straight. Um, but get prepared and obviously good luck. Good place to be. Think 4 days. Get it done. Okay. Um, I'm not sure what this is. I don't know what all the I'm not sure. Oh, okay. So this is sorry, I think this is just your name, how much, cash for one-on-one coaching. If you go to practiceinterviews.com, if you just go to my coaching page, you can look at my prices. So good luck, Daphne. Jim, 100% agree. Exciting. Okay. We are at the 41-minute mark. And again, for anybody who's here, this is really a full Q&A. All questions and answers, or sorry, all questions and comments are absolutely welcome. So let's dive back in again in our downtime. Let's talk about the worst interview advice you've gotten. So we talked a little bit about um, the really short behavioral answers, not having a plan on the hypothetical side, a little bit of the terrible part on the tell me about yourself answers. I think to me, what's maybe most surprising about the worst interview advice is that there's a couple of really big topic areas that don't even exist. And the two really, really big ones that if you Google them, I'm going to show up at the top because I'm the only one talking about them. But number one is visuals. We live in a visual world. And whether people say, you're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, which is the feeling one, the reality is that visuals are going to bring about massive connectivity in your interviews. And if we are just keeping everything generic, it leads into the second item, which is your interviewers are not incentivized to show up and be there. And so they're not. So we need to incentivize and wake them up. And the best way to do that is with visuals. So just remember, most interviewers, they're not even, maybe they're part of the team or like a partner team, but usually the only interviewers who truly care are the hiring managers. So it's just important to remember to really keep them attentive. And one of the best ways is to do that is with visuals. And I'm happy to dive in deeper to either of those areas if the audience wants. Okay, what is the best way to practice GCA googliness leadership for a customer engineer? So again, I think I would default back to that question coming through because we answered that same exact question for an account strategist. And basically, what I want you to do is just really get heady in terms of wearing the hat of the role. Meaning, like, you are really going in and answering all these hypothetical questions like you're already a customer engineer at Google, working in whether it's a CE focused in data or app mod or infra or whatever it is, got to get into that headspace. And like, if you don't know GCP, again, I'm not saying you need to be a GCP expert, but if you're presenting solutions on the data side and we're not talking about BigQuery and Looker, you're just not going to connect with your interviewer. And the Google recruiters will continually say, like, hey, you don't need to know Google Cloud. It's like, well, yeah, but they're not talking to the interviewers who use Google Cloud every day, all day. And we want to bring that visual in so they connect with us. Now, these interviews, like when we talk about GCA and googliness and leadership, just remember it could be hypothetical or behavioral questions. So you just want to always be prepared for both types of question. That's going to be really important too. And then when you solve on the hypothetical side for a client, for a customer engineer, it's not a generic client. Come up with a specific client. It's going to be really helpful. It's pretty broad. Let me see. Let's go. Let's continue to go on. Let me know if you have more questions. Hey Jeff, what are your thoughts on taking a role of lower scope and less comp in these tough times if an offer along these lines does come through? Okay. Do smaller firms, say 500 million in revenue, have the ability to uplevel a job posted a notch? Is this common? I would actually say that a smaller company probably has a better opportunity to uplevel, probably more nimble and flexible. These big companies, lots of process, lots of built-in systems. They're likely not going to change. It doesn't mean that we can't uplevel. Of course, I've seen that plenty of times at all companies, including Google. But um, it can be common. It really depends on where we're at in our career. And I think sometimes we take that job, right? We just say, look, I'm going to take this job and I'm not going to commit to staying for any length of time. And if a better, higher paying, higher level job comes along, we burn a bridge because we have to look out for ourselves in the job world. These companies care about the bottom line and the bottom line only. So we definitely need to make sure that we are just doing everything we can to protect ourselves. And sometimes that means taking a job now to only stay for 2 or 3 months because we're still active in job search. So you can stay pretty active. And again, burn a bridge. Okay. I'd rather burn a bridge and get a 100K increase than just say, oh, I don't feel like burning a bridge. So I'm just going to stay here for a long time. Just my 2 cents. Let me know if you have more questions, Jim. Please dive into how we would bring visuals into an in-person panel interview. No different depending on the interview. Could be a video interview, a one-on-one interview, a panel interview. We're just not talking generically, meaning like if we're answering a behavioral question, for example, I don't want to just know that the actions I took were that we planned, we chatted with stakeholders, uh, we tested and executed, and then we launched and we documented. It's like it's way too generic. I would want to know in your planning that you specifically spoke with the software engineering, product, and marketing teams. I would want to know that as part of that plan, you did a 2-hour workshop Q&A session specifically with the marketing team to learn how you were going to market A, B, and C. So the use of visuals will not change at all depending on the interview. We got to bring depth in. Again, if I always go back to the example of if I tell you I ate some food and watched the sports game last night. You'd say, well, like, okay, like it's forgotten. You've already forgotten what I just said. But if I said, I ate the best pepperoni pizza while watching the Boston Bruins NHL playoff game, you may not eat pepperoni pizza. You might not watch hockey, but you can start to at least get a visual and a picture for what I'm talking about. And now we remember the pepperoni pizza and the hockey game because they're just a little bit more specific. It's not adding a ton of words. It's just adding some visual clarity so they can follow us on the visual journey. We all listen to stories from the time we were children. And so we're so used to going through that kind of visual journey in the story, but answering hypothetical questions, especially like when we remove that, it just gets lost. And of course, on the behavioral side, we got to be able to show them the visual of the journey that we did take. Hope that helps. Unable to see prices for one-on-one coaching on the website, $497 per session. Okay, that's for strategy sessions and interview coaching, and then the negotiation is more expensive because that's a white glove, meaning we have unlimited amounts of touches and communications. Okay. Do you use Jeff's AI tool? Thanks for that, Jim. Again, the AI tool, one of the reasons for building the AI tool is to build something in at a lower price point for a broader audience. And obviously, again, if anybody wants to use this today, 20% off the AI tool today. And that's I think that's for the 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month program, so I think I've done it for all 3. I can't remember when I set it up, so, but I'm pretty sure it will give you discounts on all those packages. Thanks for that, Jim. Love when other people recommend the service. Um, okay, cool. Awesome. Good to hear. Is the correct course for getting prepared for Google title as Director of Software Engineering? All right. So I appreciate the questions. Um, that would be the correct course of action. Yeah, for a Director of Software Engineering, do the one-on-one interview coaching. That's correct. In the past, I've actually written some key visuals on a whiteboard in person. Don't know what Jeff thinks of that, however. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of removed the whiteboard because we're not doing a lot of in-person interviews. But like again, I like it more as a reference point verbally, but writing stuff down obviously never hurts. We want our audience to be able to have that visual experience. And obviously, whiteboarding back in the day was something I strongly recommended in interviews to create good visuals for our audience. It's just happening less. You can use a whiteboard in a video interview, but it usually doesn't work out quite as well. You were thinking of a PowerPoint presentation, but you mean visuals to tell a story. Yeah, if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, I would actually do almost exclusively visuals, meaning the biggest challenge I see, there's 2 big challenges I see in a PowerPoint presentation. One, inconsistency. So I want the same font size, the same colors. I want it to be incredibly consistent. It shows a level of organization and understanding. And then with visuals in a PowerPoint presentation, what I want the slides to be almost all visual. Why? Put a lot of words on a slide and people will start reading the words and stop listening to you. And we all do it. I mean, like if you think about closed caption or using subtitles on like movies and stuff, that's becoming so common even in videos because it people read and they'll stay on for longer periods of time when they read. But when they're reading, they stop listening. And so in a PowerPoint, again, I would recommend using more pictures than words. I hope that helps. Jeff, any tips on preparing your mind before an interview? Um, it's it's this is actually surprisingly this is where I began the interview mastery course, and that is not a push for you to buy the course. But the way I prepare my mind before an interview is I 100% recommend to anybody watching that you shut down a half an hour before your interviewer interviews. I would personally shut down. I would sit in a chair. I would close my eyes. I would put on some meditation music and I would just relax. And I would really focus in on deep breathing. And that will do so much for your nervous system to control your anxiety. And it's also really important because our breath really controls everything. And then lastly, there's so much data that says don't use up brain capacity before an interview. So we definitely want to have that shutdown time before the interview. But your breath is hands down the most important. And, one of the big things that I coach on is just taking in a big breath and exhaling. And you couldn't even really see me. I wasn't exaggerating the motion, but I would do that in a job interview. Just make sure you're taking deep breaths. Your breath is everything for controlling your nerves, your anxiety. There's just a ton of data and science on this. So you can look up pulsed breathing, square breathing, but really slow down your heart rate, meditate a little bit, get on that music, like don't prep right up until the interview. And then in the interview, you may want to have in your purview around your laptop or whatever it is to just have a sticky note that says breathe. Sometimes we forget. And so you can see even that one deep breath, what's happened. My voice has gotten a little bit lower, a little bit slower because I just took one deep breath. It's really impactful, something I strongly recommend. Thanks. How many more sessions required will be determined in this first session? I am a low to no pressure coach, so I'm always going to give input and guidance at the end, but I will never force anybody to do more sessions because obviously I can't. So I will just we'll talk about it at the end and figure out what's a good next step or good next path. But it really depends. And then obviously there's multiple resources, so it can be a combination of the coaching, the course, the AI tool. Grouping it all together will just increase success. Okay, with PowerPoint, transitions are also key. Nail those. Add color over around what is on the page, but I'd recommend not reading the slide verbatim. No, you don't need to because if you put words on that slide, you don't need to read it verbatim. They're reading it. That's what they're doing. They're looking at the slide and reading it. So if they have the opportunity to be reading on a slide, chances are you put too many words on that slide. And I've coached on many presentation interviews, and the more text there is, I do it. I just we naturally default to reading. It's just what we do as humans, and so we're putting a lot of text in there, it's just not gonna play well. We wanna do visual imagery and, like, really think about, have we written out the script? Do we know our talking points? Do we know the follow-up questions we wanna ask? Presentation interviews are really critical, and so, yeah, I like just almost only visuals, and then we talk towards those visuals. Again, it's just to we don't wanna distract our audience at all. Um Okay, we are really getting close to the 1 hour mark. Really good engagement today. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to wait and see if any additional questions come in. I'm just trying to think of like the worst interview advice you've gotten. So there's a couple of just like I think I did one of these videos, and I can just push people to this, but not just past the interviews, but like the job search stuff, and like even as we get into negotiation, like I would just say some of the worst negotiation advice I've seen is like the salary range. If you give me a salary range of 80 to 100, I'm always going to pick 80. And then I see all these, like one of the most famous creators right now in the interview space. I'm not going to say their name, but they're an aggregator. They never worked in HR recruiting, but they have this massive following of millions of people on TikTok, and they're doing negotiation videos about emailing negotiation. I would never do that. It's just absolutely horrible advice. We lose all our power in email. Email is not a great way to communicate major life decisions. So, just another bad piece of advice on the negotiation side. I maybe should have titled this "What is the worst overall job search advice?" But I was just kind of thinking of those two items popped to mind. When we don't know the questions asked, how do we come up with the visuals ahead? Um, well, we're never gonna I mean, so when we don't know what the questions are asked, well, on the behavioral side, you are building visuals into your examples. So you can control that. You're not worried about the questions that are being asked. You're just worried about getting your best 5 to 10 examples down into a Google Doc or a Word doc and just working through those and continuing to bolster with visuals. Again, it's contextual. So what does that mean? It means you're adding a word here, a word there to just bring in some visuals. Now, on the hypothetical side, you're taking the assumed role. Let's go with that most recent one that came up, a customer, let's say it's a customer engineer focused in data analytics for Google. Well, I'm pre-thinking about the visuals of what are the data components that would be brought up in that type of interview. So specifically, two are I'd be want to be bringing up visuals like Looker, BigQuery, et cetera, and how we might navigate those systems. So you can absolutely pre-plan visuals. And again, yeah, this may be a good opportunity to maybe check out the AI tool to get a little bit more feedback on how those answers are playing out, if you like. Jeff, thanks again for holding these sessions. I'm excited to hear about the two shorts you'll complete by next week. Um, yeah, I mean, I have a couple of Google specific ones in mind that I was thinking about doing, and it's still the goal for next week. I want to hold myself to that because you did the 25 questions. So you give a range where the low number in the range is higher than what you really want, and the other side, they getting a win by choosing the lower number? No. I would say never, ever, ever use a range in a negotiation. You pick a high number that you wanna go after, don't use a range. I don't like the ranges. It's you're presenting too much ambiguity. Specifics win, in my opinion. And so, if the role was posted at X range, you want Y range, you go for Z range because it's outside of even what you want, and you push for that number. Of course, when we negotiate, this is a bigger topic. Um, this is a bigger topic, but um, I lost my train of thought. But on the negotiation, when we get to the ranges, just like I would just say, don't do it. It's just not valuable. They're always going to go to the lower number, so the upper numbers just don't make a lot of sense, in my opinion. Absolutely, and it was nice meeting you. I didn't make the connection before. I was just moving too fast, so it was nice to meet you the other day. Um, Okay, we are right at the 1 hour mark. So let's do this. Okay, well, let's take Liz's question first. Are there any differences, nuances, or additional items you would recommend preparing when pursuing an AI company rather than G or FANG companies? No. I actually, I get it. People show up, they think of Jeff as the Google guy, and obviously I give a lot of Google advice, but the biggest thing I've learned from coaching, we're approaching 3,000 one-on-one coaching sessions, is that um, I learned from such a broad audience, and I think that my coaching actually is much more generic. It's really about having a plan, having a system, and I wouldn't change that plan or system very much depending upon the company. I mean, like, obviously, if I'm going and interviewing at Amazon, I know they ask only behavioral questions, so I'm prepping only on those questions. But changing up the strategy, um, no, I wouldn't change up the strategy at all for an AI company. Yeah, customer engineer AI ML role for RRK. They could come at you with some straight technical questions in the AI and ML space, so you'll want to be prepared for those types of questions. Usually, the RRK is going to be a mix of behavioral, hypothetical, and role specific or role technical questions. So I'd be ready for anything in that space. Worst advice, one job coach recommended followers to lie about FANG companies on their resume to get more traction. Yeah, I mean, 100%. You'll get more traction if you put Google or Amazon or Apple or Meta or Microsoft on your resume. But what happens when the resume doesn't match the job application, and all of a sudden I see on the job application that there is no Microsoft job, I'm instantly going to reject you from the process. And I will be checking that the application and the resume match, because before I'm going to send that for a background check, I just want to make sure things are buttoned up. And if there's questions, I'm going to ask them. Are all recruiters going to do that due diligence? No, but that's a lie. And you want to lie in the job interview process, like, good luck. Like, you're you're mostly not going to get away with it. And by the way, maybe 20 years ago, sure, but everything's online. We can look up all data on all people. You want to find out anything about anybody, you dig enough, you'll find it, right? So, like, the reality is that it's horrible advice, and you should we should flag this kind of stuff, like job coaches that are recommending these kinds of strategies. It's total bush league, and it's not appropriate, right? And so, um, yeah, obviously, as you could tell, I really don't like that advice. um, I like to be as honest and transparent in all interactions, and we are obviously pivoting and putting the information in a way that makes us look good. Of course, we want to make ourselves look good, but we don't want to lie about stuff. It will most of the time. It's going to come back to bite us, and yeah, and by bite us, it's not going to be good. Hey, Jim, thanks for being here. Appreciate it as always. Have to jet. Thanks so much, Jeff. We'll report back in 2 weeks after a conference next week where I'm going to see how many people I can help. Roll that strategy and then write about it. Write a LinkedIn article or shoot a short video or share your experience because I guarantee it will just land in a totally different way. Um, the default mode in job search and networking is to be the same as everybody else. And the challenge is that with these approaches, we now have a global audience. It's really, really hard like to stand out when we take the same approach and we focus on ourselves. If we always focus in on the other person, they're going to talk more about themselves, they're going to like us more, and therefore we're going to have better results. So I love it. I can't wait to hear back. Thanks so much, Liz. Does it make a difference who you get a referral from, a random colleague or someone in a more senior role? Oh, it depends. I mean, if they're really senior up, like a VP or something, it could make a bigger impact or have a bigger difference. I haven't seen it swing a ton, but obviously, if they're pretty influential, we'll always take that kind of referral if we have it. If we have that high level referral, yeah, let's always roll with it. But getting referred is getting referred. We're just always just looking for a door to be open for us. So the biggest coaching there is just don't hold back, right? Make sure that you're really pushing to get referred whenever you can and you're leaning on your network as much as you can. Hope that helps. Awesome. Awesome live. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we're out of questions. So again, let me go. I'm going to go to my wrap up, but any additional questions that come in while I'm going into my wrap up, I'm happy to answer. The coupon code May 2024, 20% off the AI tool and interview mastery course. I know I did the interview mastery course, I think through tomorrow, and same with the AI tool. So just gives you a little bit more time to make that decision, and then it will expire. I'm still doing one on one interview, one on one negotiation coaching, and one on one strategy sessions. That's resume, LinkedIn. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific every Tuesday and new original content every Monday. If you like what I did today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, just listed the times when I post content. I'm going to come in, I'm going to answer these last couple of comments, and then I'm going to hop off. Thanks so much. You are welcome. And thank you. And thank you to this audience. I mean, I love this community. So gracious, so kind, so friendly, and I hope that's the tribe that I've built. So I appreciate everyone, and I will be back next week in my regular location, not in the basement, doing a live. But thank you again, everybody, for being here, and have a great day.